Recently, I ran into one of those tedious coaches that insisted the way they did things was the only correct way to do things. I would mention I was taught to do it this way by this legendary champion, or this legendary coach. And his response is that they must have gotten lucky. So turning an infuriating situation into a positive, here's 50 different ways to throw a jab. I also give an example of a specific fighter that used it. Mostly boxers because they're the best at the jab, but also kickboxers, Thai fighters, and mixed martial artists too. A lot of these can be combined with each other, and you might call these techniques something different. So I'm looking forward to discussing in the comments section. Let's get started. Number 1. Vertical fist jab. Espoused by the great Jack Dempsey and used extensively by Manny Pacman. It's great for splitting the guard. Horizontal fist, the most common way. It aligns the biggest two knuckles to hit, and if done correctly, there's a last second twist that can cause further damage. We'll go with De La Hoya here, because he had a really nice jab. Number 3, stiff jab, where the jab is kept rigid and tight and the whole body tenses on impact. Used by Sonny Liston to decimate opponents with his freakishly large hands, as wide around as most men's biceps. Power jab, like a stiff jab but with a lot more weight and commitment behind it. Recently used by Triple G and Oscar Valdez. Loose jab, or throwaway jab, thrown to irritate and bother opponents in order to set up harder shots. Used by the likes of Alexander Usyk. Flicker jab, used by Thomas Hearns and Muhammad Ali, who compared his jab to swatting at a fly or the crack of a whip. This jab starts loose, but still hits hard. In comparison to a throwaway jab, it has a lot more impact, a lot more angles, and can cause a lot of swelling as the fight goes on. Straight jab, thrown from the shoulder or chin. The go-to standard with a clear straight path right to your target. Triple G makes for a great example. Body jab, almost always done with the level change so as not to punch down, but some Thai fighters will punch down to avoid head movement. Floyd Mayweather was a master of this jab, even knocking an opponent down with it. Rising jab, thrown from below, with the hand resting well below the shoulder or even from below the hip. Used by Mayweather and James Toney as it pairs well with the Philly shell, and by the likes of Sugar Ray Robinson. Robinson had a lot of jabs, and he should be the first fighter that everyone looks at if they want to better understand the jab. Down jab, aiming down at your opponent from a high position, usually thrown from a high guard or high long guard. Used by Terrence Crawford to paw over the opponent's guard. It's also a useful punch for tracking the opponent's head movement. Corkscrew jab, the fist flips over and turns down at the end to curve around the shoulder. Great for southpaws and those fighting them. Winky Wright had this jab as one of many in his incredible jab arsenal. Next up, half jab or short jab, thrown with the arm already halfway extended. Leaves the boxer more open to attacks, but the jab gets there quicker and can lend itself to long guard tactics. Used by the likes of Marquez, Gomez, Lennox Lewis, and many others. Great for boxer punchers with a long reach. Backfist jab. Technically illegal in boxing, but also kind of not if it connects with the front of the two knuckles. Or at least close to it. Used by Thomas the Hitman Hearns, Naseem Hamed, and many others. Pawing jab, used by Foreman, Liston, the man who taught it to him, and Joe Louis. This jab rakes down upon contact, leaving you more open after throwing, as Max Schmeling demonstrated with his win against Lewis. But the upside is that it covers extra surface area and occasionally pulls down the opponent's gloves, clearing way for the next shot. Feint jab, just feinting a jab, pretty self-explanatory and used by every fighter in the history of ever. You just pretend you're throwing a jab to set up another punch. Could even be another real jab. Moving into the realm of, are these actually jabs now? Hook jab, or a straight-armed hook. In between a jab and a hook, the arm is straight and then loops and angles around, but can hit from the front. Used by Lennox Lewis and Tyson Fury, amongst others. Hammer jab, used by Gene Fulmer and thrown from his strange reverse crossguard position. As odd as his style was, it worked to defeat the best boxer the world had ever seen, Sugar Ray Robinson. Next we have the upper jab, thrown with the palm up like an uppercut. Halfway between a straight and an uppercut. It's been used by McGregor and Prince Naseem. Circling jab, or fencer jab, used extensively by Lomachenko. It can begin as a circle to disguise and distract, or circle around their guard or jab to connect as more of a corkscrew. Also great for clearing away attacks off of the original jab. You can even set up catches off of it. Number 20. Leg Jab. I think Yoel Romero just threw this to be funny, but he's made out of adamantium, so who knows? Maybe it was to dull reactions for takedowns or something. Now on to footwork. Stationary jab. Thrown in place without moving your feet. Thrown by everyone, goes without saying, but had to say it. Stepping jab. Taking a small step to gain some distance. Now on to something fun. Drop step jab. Thrown by Jack Dempsey. Your weight is moved forward and your foot is lifted at the last moment to fall into your punch. Look at it like you're tripping and then catch yourself with your fist on the opponent's face. A similar idea in principle is to throw a jab off of a kick or check. Pivot jab, used to change angles to circle while jabbing. Great for exiting. Jersey Joe Walcott had some great examples, and his footwork in general was incredible. Shuffle or leaping jab, or Gazelle Jab if you like. Used by marvelous Marvin Hagler. He could catch you halfway across the ring with it. Once he got a hold of you, it was hard to escape. Skip jab, used by the greatest, Muhammad Ali. The hop gave him extra mobility and reach. A lot of risk involved, but great if you could make it pay off. This footwork doesn't just throw out the rulebook, it takes it out back and beats it until it knows not to show its face around the place anymore. Cross step jab. Speaking of, Ali would also cross step on his jab, with and without hopping. He was inspired to do this by watching his idol Sugar Ray Robinson, who would use it to glide across the ring. Probably he got this technique from his love of dancing. Blitz jab or jump jab, again by Ali, who would also hop off both feet while throwing. So rare, I've only ever seen it with Ali and in martial arts point tournaments to score a quick point with no power behind it. Wait a minute, the video's almost done and I realize Walcott did it too. Ghost step jab. The foot looks like it's going to set down, but then the fighter explodes forward at the last second. Used by the great Ricardo Lopez. And here by Leonard to land a knockdown. Sneak step jab. Used by Lomachenko and many more. The jab disguises the back foot sneaking either forward or backwards, setting up a harder punch. Deep inside step jab. Opens you up to the opponent's cross but creates a nice angle to land your jab while circling. Used extensively by pressure fighters like Tyson. Deep outside step jab. Used by southpaws and those fighting them. Denies the opponents an angle to hit you from their rear side attacks while lining up your own attacks. Here's Lomachenko doing it. Shift through jab. Moving into southpaw or neutral stance while jabbing to add some extra distance, power, and angles. Used by Wonderboy Thompson to change angles and line up his high kick. Shift back jab. Used here by Mike Tyson against Razor Ruddock. Switch jab. Instead of shifting by stepping forward, both feet switch. Used by Dominik Cruz as part of his brilliant, elusive, and tricky style. Superman jab. Thrown by the living legend, GSP. He would even chain it into a roundhouse. Split step jab. Used by Ricardo Lopez and Salvador Sanchez. The move quickly transitions the fighter from a short, more mobile boxing stance into a deeper power stance, great for punching hard or wrestling. Most of the examples I have in my video are of power punches, but trust me, this works for the jab too. Now on to head movement. Starting with the ducking jab, pretty self-explanatory. Done by everyone, but Chavez was pretty good at it, so I'll use him as an example. Slip outside jab. Tyson was great at this one, combining it with the rising jab to close distance. When people say the term up jab, they usually mean this outside slip with the jab going up, but not always. Slip inside jab. Requires insane balance and is very hard to do since you have little base of support, but Sugar Ray Leonard could pull it off consistently. Blends well with the cross step. Pullback jab. Used by Gomez and Rocky Marciano. The jab is more to fend off attacks while closing distance. The power of the punch is sacrificed to keep the weight back so that the follow-up attack, where the weight is moved forward, is more powerful. Number 42. Jamming jab. The jab is used more to block and jam punches than to land. Used a lot by Cotto against southpaws. Basically as a way to brute force hand fighting. Long block jab. The jab is used to block follow-up attacks. Used by George Foreman and the legendary sky-piercing knee, Diesel Noy. Trap jab, pulling down the opponent's guard to trap them off of your jab. Used by a lot of MMA greats, but also Deontay Wilder. In fact, this advanced tactic was responsible for the majority of his knockouts. Frame jab, leaving the jab out to turn or lean on the opponent's head or shoulder. This was Sonny Liston's forte. In fact, he did this with pretty much all of his punches, leaning his weight on his competitors to set them up for the next shot. Smother jab. The jab is left out to clamp the opponent's guard to their face so they can't follow up with a shot. Lomachenko, Foreman, and Joe Louis are prime examples. Cross smother jab, used by southpaws to position the arm across the opponent's guard to block their vision and smother their attack with their forearm. Here's Pacquiao doing it. Push jab, can be done to the chest or shoulder to turn the opponent. Hearns used this setup to land a beautiful knockdown against Leonard. Pull jab, the opponent slips and the jab is turned into a collar tie. This can be great for setting up uppercuts, but it was also used by Muhammad Ali to slow down the action. Lingering jab, a jab that stays in front for a moment, used to block the opponent's vision for follow-up attacks. I'm sure at this point you can recognize the boxers from the previous examples. Now for some extra credit. On to the miscellaneous, fantastical, and downright illegal. Eye jab, used by John Jones. Heartbreak jab. While a lot of moves from the popular boxing anime Hajime no Ippo are greatly exaggerated but overall based in real techniques, this is not one of them. However, it used to be common for boxers to jab to the heart on purpose because they believed it would weaken their opponent. This was probably accidentally true because it's body work after all. Lastly, the shadow jab, used by Rigondeaux. Rigondeaux would shadow box in the ring, showing the exact punch he was about to knock his opponent out with in slow motion, and then hitting exactly where they would be in just a moment. This seems like a magic trick until you realize he was just baiting opponents to counter those specific punches. It was basically a dare they took him up on and lost. It would be fun to see in an anime though. I wrote this out in about an hour, so I'm sure there's a lot of stuff I missed. So leave those in the comments, along with suggestions for any other videos. Check out my books to learn all of these tactics and more. For the modern martial artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.